How you doing, man? I
Oh,
like your I like your backdrop.
so do I. I like the movie.
Oh, thanks,
Here-
dude.
I'm here with Adam Cooper, co-writer and director of Sleeping Dogs. I guess I want to start with that because Bill College is your writing partner, and you guys have worked on a bunch of stuff together.
Yeah,
And I was like asking this with writing partners because I do writing just as a hobby. I
yeah.
can't imagine having someone over my shoulder watching me as I type. Like, how does the process with the writing partner work? Like the actual work, like fingers to keyboard sort of thing.
We would sort of divide and conquer, and this was sort of I think a unique opportunity in that, as you know from seeing the film, it's kind of divided into chapters, and so I think it allowed us to kind of silo our work. But Bill and I didn't live in the same city, so we were writing remotely. So to your point about somebody looking over your shoulder, we were never really looking over each other's shoulder quite so much, but always reviewing each other's work. And, one of us would write, send it to the other would revise, send back, and we'd kind of go back and forth that way. But at the time that we wrote this, I think we started at the end of, it was basically the beginning of 2017. We'd already been working together for almost 20 years. So there was a rhythm to sort of how that went.
One of the things I really like about this movie, especially early on, is Russell Crowe's character. He has, I don't know if amnesia is the right word, memory issues, we'll say. And then he gets to basically reopen a case that he already worked on. And I really love that concept. I'm assuming that came from the novel that this is based on, or is that something
Um,
that you kind of added to it?
well, the I would say the adaptation of the screenplay from the book, it's in many ways pretty different from the book. The central sort of murder mystery that took place in the past is something that we pulled from the book, but the character of Roy is a character that appears, I think, probably in the last 75 or 80 pages of the book, and it actually isn't even the central figure of the narrative or sort of the play on his memory as it relates to sort of the way the plot unfolds. Yes, the character of Roy Freeman does exist in the book, but the way that he's used sort of as a central figure is kind of unique to the film
Yeah.
because he's not the central figure of the book. So we've kind of reframed the narrative of the book through the lens of as kind of a tertiary character.
So it's kind of like a Voyage of the Demeter sort of thing, where they didn't
Yeah.
take all of Dracula, they just found this one cool part that they liked and kind of expanded on that.
Yeah, though, I mean, the sort of, the Laura Baines character, the Richard Finn character, him having an ex-partner, all of that does exist in the book, but it's assembled, it's jigsawed together differently.
That'd be pretty fun, kind of adapting it that way, because like I guess you could always just copy and paste the book onto screenplay format. What fun would that be?
If it were only that easy.
Actually, speaking of that easy, because you and Bill College have worked on a bunch of movies, Assassin's Creed, Transporter, Exodus, Tower Heist. These are big movies. How does the script that you guys put, how does that usually translate? Because I've heard things online of like Madam Web came out and that was a big thing. Like, oh, how do these writers keep getting jobs? Because like, these movies are whatever. And a couple screenwriters come up and go, dude, we turned in the screenplay. Like, what happens after that is anyone's guess. Like what's
Uh,
kind of your take on that whole thing, having worked in bigger movies like that?
yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, writers, I think more and more in sort of the feature film space, you're kind of more hired to do a job. I think in the television space, writers kind of have, a much larger role in sort of the guidance of the finished product. But I think, when you're dealing with movies that, have $150 million budgets, I think your script is, it's a blueprint, and then a director has to sort of run it through kind of the movie projector in their mind, right? So I think that there's an effort to be true to what's sort of written on the page, but it almost needs to be like chewed up and reconstituted by the filmmaker. I think you can have a great script and it can get screwed up. You can have a not great script and it can be made better in its translation to the screen. I don't think there's, one narrative around that. A great script can make a not great director look great. A great director can make a not great script better. I think it varies.
And also, you and Bill have like I mentioned all the different movies you guys have worked on, and I mean, you guys don't stick to one genre. You do the Tower Heist, kind of action comedy, except it definitely great comedy. A Transporter, straight up action movie, Exodus, the Ridley Scott like period
Yeah.
piece, like that's got to be pretty awesome for you to not be pigeonholed. And then you do this, which is like completely different from anything else you've written before. It's
Yeah.
got to be really exciting to not be pigeonholed. Like, hey, Adam, Bill, write this. Well, we haven't done that before. We know. We've seen we've seen your
Yeah,
IMDb.
I think I think as I've gotten older, I'm kind of drawn to characters who are in crisis in some form, and that can take a lot of different forms. That can be a crisis of faith, of identity, morality, financial, familial, and over the course of the narrative, they, are somehow made more whole or resolved. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they go from a bad place to a good place. It could mean that they learn something about themselves that plugs a hole in the puzzle of who they were. That can exist in any genre, really. For me, that's kind of what I'm ultimately drawn to.
Well, with Sleeping Dogs, like this movie's really great. Good crime thriller, great mystery. I love the mystery aspect of it. And this being your first directorial debut, please tell me this isn't the last one. Do you have another one on
I hope
deck?
so. I hope so. I would love to get to do it again.
So what kind of process is it to like kind of get in the director's chair of this?
It's kind of an exhilarating experience, and I defined exhilarating as equal parts exciting and terrifying. When I think when you're just writing, you oftentimes just kind of there's a real freedom to what you're putting down. But I think as a director, once you have to take what's put down and translate it onto the screen, between what's written down and it ending up on the screen, there are all these practicalities that you have to now consider, right? Like it's a movie that has a present tense story, and then there's lots of memory beats, backstory, flashbacks, right? And each of those flashbacks, many of them came with sort of multiple location changes within the course of a minute, right? But when you start to think about how you then practically do that, every time you change a location, even if you're there for 10 seconds, you're moving all of this stuff. You're moving an entire company of people. You're moving an army from one location to the next. And I think you learn a lot about the practicality of trying to translate what's on the page to the screen when you're directing something for the first time.
Feel like look at you type it on the page, go, this is gonna be cool, and then you get there on the day, it's like, oh crap, how the hell are we gonna do this? Does that is
Yeah,
that gonna affect your writing going forward, like writing for other directors, like, ooh, this would be a really cool scene, but I'm not gonna do that to
I
them.
think
Well,
it I think it depends. I mean, when you're dealing with like really big IP like Assassin's Creed or Exodus, where the director is going to get to work with a sweeping canvas, I think you think a little bit less about that. But when you're making movies on a budget, it's definitely something to think about.
yeah. Well, we do have what's in the box segment on our show. And in the box we got people put a bunch of movies in. Each week we'll pull one out and watch it for the following week. These are movies that would be either really personal to you or a movie that you think is really good that just no one talks about. So what's a movie you would like to put in the box?
Hmm. I'll put Jacob's Ladder in the box.
Oh, that's a good one. I haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And we have Sleeping Dogs is in theaters on March 22nd. I might have to go back in the theater and watch it there because this was quite a fun one. And I just love Russell Crowe. Like I've always loved Russell Crowe, but for some reason, and we talked about this on the podcast, like the last
Yeah.
last couple years of movies he's been doing, like I don't know what it is. He's got that. I mean, he's always had that magic, but I think he's one of those actors that gets better with age, I think.
It was a real honor and a treat to get to work with him.
Yeah. Well, Adam, thank you for joining me today and
Thank you,
hope
Eric.
wish you all the success or even more than you already have. But
Oh, so kind of you, man. Thank you
uh,
so much.
yeah, thank you much.
I'll check out your podcast.
Oh, you don't have to do
I will.
that.
I love podcasts.
All right. Well,
My
thank you
wife
much.
has a podcast.
Oh, what's your podcast?
It's called Was I in a Cult?
I'm we're done. I'm going to listen to that right now.
Okay.
It's called Was I in a Cult?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely checking that out.
Check it out, man.
Cool.
All right. Pleasure, Eric.
Pleasure.